She was 78 years old, standing outside in the cold, in her nightgown, with one small bag, and a note taped to her front door. The note said, "We sold the house. You have 30 days. We already left." It was signed by her own children, her own blood, the people she had given everything to, every sleepless night, every dollar she ever earned, every prayer she ever whispered. Gone, just like that. Her name was Dorothy Mae Collins, and this is her story. Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything, not just for Dorothy, but for every single person who watched it happen. Welcome back to American Granny Stories. If you are new here, this channel is for you. We tell real stories, stories about real grandmothers, real women, real families, real heartbreak, and real love. We tell the stories that no one else is telling, the stories that happen behind closed doors, in quiet kitchens, in empty bedrooms, in nursing homes that smell like antiseptic and loneliness. Today's story is different. Today's story is going to stay with you long after this video ends, long after you put down your phone, long after you go to bed tonight, because Dorothy Mae Collins is not just a grandmother from Tennessee. She is every grandmother. She is your grandmother. She might even be you. This story is about sacrifice. It is about betrayal. It is about what happens when a family forgets who built them. And it is about what happens when the world finally sees the truth. So before we begin, to support our team, please subscribe to this channel as much as possible and bring your friends to this channel. Tell us your stories in the comments. Our team will definitely share your story on our channel. I want you to do one thing. Put your hand on your heart, take a slow breath, and just listen, because Dorothy's story deserves to be heard. Dorothy Mae Collins was born in 1946, in a small town called Harlan, in the mountains of eastern Kentucky. She was the fifth of 7 children. Her father worked in the coal mines. Her mother took in laundry from neighbors. They were poor, not poor in the way people use that word today. They were truly poor. There were nights when supper was cornbread and water, and nights when the children shared one blanket between all 7 of them, nights when the wind came right through the walls. But Dorothy never complained, even as a little girl. She had something, a kind of strength that you cannot buy, cannot borrow, cannot fake. It came from somewhere deep inside her. Her mother used to say, Dorothy could turn a broken day into something beautiful. And she was right. Dorothy was the child who would pick wildflowers and put them in a jar on the kitchen table, so the house felt less sad. She was the child who would sing while doing chores, so her younger siblings would stop crying. She was the child who would save her small piece of cake for the youngest one, because watching her little brother smile meant more to her than sugar ever did. That was Dorothy. That was always Dorothy. She finished high school in 1964. At a time when many girls from her town never made it that far. She wanted to go to college. She had applied to a school in Knoxville. She had even gotten in. But the week before she was supposed to leave, her father had an accident in the mine. He lost 2 fingers on his right hand. He could not work the same way again. And Dorothy, without a single word of complaint, put her college letter in a drawer and got a job at the local diner. She waited tables 6 days a week. She brought home every dollar she made. She kept almost nothing for herself. Her sisters would get new shoes. Her brothers would get new boots. Dorothy wore the same pair of church shoes for 3 years, and she never said a word about it. Not once. She met Robert Collins when she was 19. He came into the diner on a Tuesday morning. He ordered black coffee and eggs over easy. He left a tip that was 3 times the bill, and he came back the next morning, and the morning after that, for 6 weeks straight, until Dorothy finally agreed to go for a walk with him. Robert was from Virginia. He was 24. He was working construction on a new road project. He was tall, quiet, gentle in a way that big men sometimes are. He had kind eyes. Eyes that looked at Dorothy like she was the most important thing in any room she walked into. She had never been looked at like that before. She did not know what to do with it at first. She almost ran from it. But something told her to stay, and she stayed. They were married in the spring of 1966, in a small Baptist church, with 23 people in the pews. Dorothy wore a dress her mother made from fabric bought at the discount bin. It was white with small yellow flowers. She carried wildflowers she picked herself that morning. She cried at the altar, not from sadness, but from something she had never felt before. Pure joy, simple and complete. Robert held her hands and said his vows so quietly that only she could hear them. And that was exactly right, because those words were only for her. They moved to Nashville in 1967. Robert got a steady construction job. Dorothy found work at a textile factory. They rented a 2-room apartment on the east side of town. The building had a leaky roof. The neighbor upstairs played the radio too loud. The hot water only worked sometimes. But Dorothy scrubbed those 2 rooms until they shone. She put curtains on the windows. She planted a pot of herbs on the fire escape. She made that apartment into a home. Because that is what Dorothy did. She could make a home out of anything. Their first child came in 1968, a boy they named James Robert Collins. Jimmy. Dorothy had a difficult labor. 14 hours. No pain medication because the hospital had run out and there were 3 other women delivering that same night. Robert sat outside in the hallway the entire time, holding his hat in his hands, praying. When the nurse finally came out and told him he had a son, Robert Collins, this big quiet man from Virginia, put his face in his hands and wept like a child. Dorothy heard him from inside the room, and she smiled, because she knew then. She knew this man was going to be a good father. Their second child came in 1970, a girl, Linda Sue Collins. Then in 1972, another boy, Michael Ray Collins. And in 1975, their youngest, a girl they named Carol Ann Collins. 4 children, a house they had bought by then, a small yellow house with a big oak tree in the front yard, in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other's names. Where children ran through sprinklers in the summer. Where neighbors brought casseroles when someone was sick. It was a good life. Not easy, but good. Robert worked hard. But construction work in Tennessee in the 1970s was not always steady. Some months were full. Some months were terrifyingly thin. Dorothy stretched every dollar until it nearly cried. She sewed the children's clothes herself. She grew vegetables in the backyard. She made bread from scratch. She bought in bulk. She clipped coupons. She never wasted a single thing. There were weeks when she made dinner from what most people would have thrown away. And somehow, those dinners were always good. The children would say to their friends, "My mom could make a feast out of nothing." And they were right. She could. But she also gave them more than food. She gave them stories. Every night, without fail. She sat on the edge of their beds, all 4 of them squeezed into 2 rooms, and she told them stories. Stories she made up. Stories her own mother had told her. Stories about brave women and kind men. Stories about holding on when everything tells you to let go. Stories about how love is the only thing that never runs out. She told those stories in a voice so soft and steady that even the oldest child would be asleep before she finished. And sometimes Robert would come to the doorway, and he would stand there, watching her, with that look in his eyes again, the one that said she was the most important thing in any room she was in. In 1983, Robert was diagnosed with heart disease. He was 41 years old. The doctor said he needed to cut back his hours, avoid heavy lifting, take medication every day. Robert took the medication. He did not cut back his hours, because he could not afford to, because Jimmy was going to college in the fall, because Linda needed braces, because Michael had outgrown everything he owned, because Carol Ann wanted to take piano lessons. Robert Collins went to work every single morning, with a heart that was slowly failing him, because his family needed him to. Dorothy knew. She knew every time she watched him take his pills. Every time she saw him sit down earlier than usual at dinner, Every time he fell asleep in his chair before the children were even in bed. She knew, and it terrified her. She started working double shifts at the factory. She got a weekend job at a grocery store. She saved every extra dollar she could. She told herself she was saving for their future. But deep inside she knew. She was saving for when he was gone. Because she knew it was coming. She just didn't know when. The children did not know how sick their father was. Robert did not want them to know. He wanted them to keep being children for as long as possible. He still threw the football with Michael in the backyard. Even when his chest ached. He still drove Carol and to piano lessons every Saturday. Even when his hands trembled on the steering wheel. He still helped Jimmy study for exams. He still took Linda shopping for her prom dress. He showed up for everything, every single thing, until he couldn't anymore. Robert Collins died on March 4, 1989. He was 47 years old. He died on a Sunday morning. Dorothy was in the kitchen making biscuits. She heard him call her name, just once, quietly. Dorothy. She found him sitting in his chair. His eyes were closed. His face was peaceful, like he had just fallen asleep. She held his hand. She called his name. He did not answer. She sat with him for a long time before she called anyone, because she needed those last few minutes. Just her and Robert. Before the world came rushing in. She was 43 years old, a widow, with 4 children still at home, with a mortgage, with bills, with a heart that had just been cut in half. And she did not stop, not once. She cried at night when no one could hear her, and in the morning she got up, and made breakfast, and sent her children to school, and went to work, because that is what Dorothy did. She kept going, even when keeping going felt impossible. She told herself, Robert worked himself to the bone for this family. The least I can do is keep it standing. And she did. Jimmy graduated college in 1990. Linda got married in 1991. Michael joined the army in 1992. Carol and went to nursing school in 1993. Dorothy watched them all leave, one by one. She hugged them at the door. She waved until she couldn't see the car anymore. And then she went back inside, to her quiet house, with the oak tree in the front yard, and Robert's chair, still in the corner, where she never moved it. The grandchildren started arriving in the mid-1990s. Jimmy married a woman named Patricia in 1992. They had 3 children, Tyler, Emma, and Little Rose. Linda had 2 children from her marriage, Caleb and Sophia. Michael met a woman in Germany while stationed there. They had a son named Marcus. Carol and never married. She focused on her nursing career, but she was close to all the children. She was the fun aunt, the one who showed up with presents and no rules. Dorothy became Grandma Dorothy to all of them, and Grandma Dorothy was something else entirely. She was the center, the warm beating heart of the whole family. Every Thanksgiving was at Grandma Dorothy's house. Every Christmas, every Easter, every summer, the grandchildren would come and stay for weeks. She would take them to the creek behind the neighborhood. She would teach them to make biscuits. She would sit on the porch with them in the evening and tell them stories, the same kind she had told their parents. Soft, steady, full of love. Tyler, Jimmy's oldest, would say years later, Grandma Dorothy's porch was the safest place in the whole world. When I was there, nothing bad could touch me. And that was exactly what Dorothy intended. She wanted her grandchildren to have a place like that. A place to come back to. A place that felt like arms around you even when no arms were there. She also helped in practical ways. When Jimmy lost his job in 2001 after the economy turned, Dorothy sent money, not a loan, a gift. She never mentioned it again. When Linda's marriage fell apart in 2004, Dorothy drove 6 hours to bring Linda and her children home. They lived in Dorothy's house for almost a year. Dorothy slept on the couch so that Linda could have her room. She never complained, not one word. When Michael came home from his second deployment, changed, quieter, harder inside, Dorothy made his favorite meal every Sunday. pot roast and mashed potatoes, and she sat with him at the table for as long as he needed, without pushing, without asking too many questions, just being there, the way mothers know how to be. When Carol Ann burned out at 45 and needed to take a leave from work, Dorothy invited her home. She ran a bath. She made soup. She tucked her grown daughter in bed like she was 5 years old. And Carol Ann let her, because sometimes even grown women need their mothers. That was Dorothy Collins for 30 years. Available, always available, to every one of them, at every hour, in every crisis. She never said, "I'm tired." She never said, "This is too much." She never said, "What about me?" She just kept giving, and giving, and giving. In 2015, Dorothy turned 69. She was still living in the yellow house. The oak tree was bigger now. The neighborhood had changed around her. Old neighbors had moved away or passed on. New people had come. She didn't know them as well, but she kept the house. She kept Robert's chair. She kept making biscuits on Sunday mornings, even if no one was coming, just in case. But something was shifting. The children, her children, were busy. Of course they were busy. Jimmy was a regional manager now, always traveling, always in meetings. Patricia, his wife, had never been particularly warm toward Dorothy. She was polite, but polite in the way a stranger at a party is polite. Correct, but not close. Linda had remarried. A man named Dennis. Dennis was not unkind, but he was not comfortable with how often Linda called her mother. He had made comments, small ones at first, then bigger ones, until Linda, slowly without realizing it, called less, and visited less, and that space between her and Dorothy grew, quietly, like a vine taking over a garden. Michael was still struggling. The army years had left marks. He drank too much. He worked odd jobs. He was not in a stable place. He would call Dorothy when he needed money. She always gave it, even when she did not have it to give. Carol Ann was the closest. She still called every week. She still visited when she could. She was the one who noticed things, who saw that Dorothy's hands shook a little more than before, who saw that Dorothy forgot small things sometimes, who saw that the house needed repairs that Dorothy was not mentioning. Carol Ann was watching, but Carol Ann was one person against a tide. In 2017, Dorothy had a small stroke. It was not devastating. She recovered most of her function, but it scared her, and it changed things. Driving became harder. Getting around the house became harder. She needed help. She asked Jimmy. He said he would look into home care services. He sent a pamphlet. She asked Linda. Linda said Dennis was going through a hard time and she couldn't leave right now. She asked Michael. He didn't answer for 3 days. Then he sent a text that said, "Sorry, Mom. Tied up. Call you soon." He didn't call soon. Carol Ann came. Carol Ann always came. She took 2 weeks off work. She organized the medications. She fixed the things that were broken. She talked to Dorothy's doctor. She cried in the car every night before coming inside, so Dorothy wouldn't see. But Dorothy knew. Dorothy always knew. When Carol Ann had to leave, Dorothy was alone again, in the yellow house, which felt bigger now, and quieter, and somehow colder. Even in July, it was a Sunday afternoon in October 2019. Dorothy was sitting on the porch. The oak tree was turning gold. She had made biscuits that morning. No one was coming. She wrapped them and put them in the freezer. Jimmy pulled into the driveway at 2 p.m. She was surprised. Happy surprised. She stood up too fast and had to hold the railing. "Jimmy, I didn't know you were coming." He got out of the car. He was wearing a business suit. On a Sunday, he kissed her on the cheek. He sat down across from her. He did not look comfortable. He looked like a man about to say something he had practiced. Dorothy felt something cold move through her. She sat back down. She waited. Jimmy talked for a long time. About responsibility. About family decisions. About what was best. About the future. About the house. Dorothy listened. She kept very still, the way she had learned to be still in hard moments. What Jimmy said, stripped down to its bones, was this. He and Linda had talked, and Michael, and they had made a decision. The house was in Dorothy's name, but it was also part of the family estate, and they felt, given Dorothy's age, given her health, given the upkeep costs, that it would be better to sell the house, use the money to put Dorothy in a nice facility, a senior living community. Very nice, Mom. You'd have friends, activities, medical support on site, and the remaining money from the sale would be divided. To help the children get back on their feet, Jimmy needed to refinance his mortgage. Linda and Dennis had debt. Michael needed help. It just makes sense, Mom. It's practical. Dorothy looked at her son. She looked at the oak tree. She looked at the door of the house where she had raised him, where he had taken his first steps, where she had held him when he was sick with fever, where his father had lived and loved and died. She looked at the empty driveway where Carol Ann's car was not parked, because no one had told Carol Ann about this meeting, and Dorothy understood. Carol Ann would have stopped it, so they had not told her. Dorothy said 4 words, quietly, "This is my home." Jimmy shifted in his chair. He explained again, with more words, more reasons, more justifications. He was patient with her in the way people are patient with someone they think cannot fully understand, and that patience, was the sharpest thing he did to her that day. Dorothy did not argue. She did not cry. She said she would think about it. Jimmy hugged her before he left. A quick hug, the kind you give to someone you are already moving away from. She stood on the porch and watched him drive away. Then she went inside. She sat in Robert's chair. She put her hand on the armrest where his hand had rested 10,000 times, and she talked to him, out loud, the way she had been doing for 30 years. "Robert, I need to know what to do." Carol Ann called that same evening. Dorothy did not tell her what had happened. Not yet. She needed to think first. She needed to be quiet with it. She needed to understand what she was willing to do. She thought about it for 2 weeks. She walked through every room of the house. She touched the walls. She stood in the children's old bedroom. She sat at the kitchen table where 40 years of dinners had happened. She looked at the marks on the door frame where she had measured the children's heights every birthday. Jimmy's height in blue pen, Linda's in red, Michael's in green, Carol Ann's in purple. Still there. After all these years. Still there. She called a lawyer. A woman named Margaret Foster. Margaret was 58, sharp, kind, the kind of lawyer who had seen everything. Dorothy told Margaret the whole story. Margaret listened without interrupting. Then she asked 3 very important questions. Is the house solely in your name? Yes. Is there any document you signed giving them any claim to it? No. And you do not wish to sell? Correct. Margaret leaned forward. She said, "Mrs. Collins, that house is yours. Every inch of it. Your children have no legal claim to it whatsoever. They cannot make you sell. They cannot force you out. And if they try, we will stop them." Dorothy exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 weeks. She also called someone else. A woman from her church. A younger woman named Beverly. Beverly ran the community outreach program. Beverly also happened to run a small local YouTube channel. She had suggested once, 3 or 4 years ago, that Dorothy should share some of her stories online. Dorothy had laughed it off then. She was not laughing now. Beverly came over on a Thursday. She brought her camera. It was small, just a phone really, with a little tripod. She set it up at Dorothy's kitchen table. Dorothy sat down in her regular chair. She smoothed her blouse. She folded her hands, and she started talking. She talked for 2 hours. She talked about Robert, about Kentucky, about the factory, about the 4 babies she raised, about the Thanksgiving tables and the summer creeks and the bedtime stories, about the stroke, about the Sunday visit, about the 4 words, "This is my home." She did not cry during the recording. She was too calm for that. too clear about what she wanted to say. She wanted people to understand, not to feel sorry for her, to understand that a woman who gives everything deserves at least the right to stay in the place she built. Beverly uploaded the video on a Friday night. She did not expect much. Neither did Dorothy. By Saturday morning, the video had 4,000 views. By Saturday night, 280,000. By Sunday, it had crossed 2 million. By the following Wednesday, it was at 11 million views. And climbing. People could not stop watching Dorothy Collins sitting at her kitchen table, calm, clear, telling the truth. The comments, millions of them, were unlike anything Beverly had ever seen. Women from Tennessee, women from Texas, women from California, women from Saudi Arabia, women from the UAE, women from Qatar and Kuwait and Bahrain, women from every corner of the world who had ever watched a mother give everything and receive nothing in return. They wrote, "This is my grandmother. This is my mother. I am Dorothy. I sat here and wept. My grandmother died in a nursing home her children put her in. I will never forgive myself. She looks exactly like my Tata. In our culture we say the mother is the pillar of the house. When you remove the pillar the house falls. These children removed their pillar. I called my mother after watching this and I cried on the phone for an hour." Dorothy Collins is every woman who ever loved more than she was loved back. News stations called. Newspapers wanted interviews. A producer in Nashville reached out about a documentary. Dorothy said no to most of it. She was not interested in fame. She had never been interested in fame. She just wanted people to know the truth. And they knew. The whole world knew. Jimmy saw the video. He called Dorothy on a Tuesday morning. His voice was tight. He said the video was embarrassing to the family. He said she should take it down. Dorothy listened. She said, "Jimmy, I raised you to know the difference between right and wrong. I'd like you to sit with that." She hung up. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat in Robert's chair. And she was at peace. Linda watched the video 3 times. She called Carol Ann. She was crying. She said, "I don't know how we became this." Carolyn said, "I know how. But that's not the important question. The important question is, what do we do now?" Carol Ann moved in with Dorothy in January 2020. She took a transfer to a Nashville hospital. She gave up her apartment in Memphis. She brought her plants and her books and her cat named Biscuit. She said it was temporary. Dorothy said, "You can stay as long as you want." And she meant it like a promise. Linda came in February. Without Dennis. She sat at the kitchen table. She held Dorothy's hands. She said, "Mom, I am so sorry." Dorothy looked at her daughter. She said, "I know you are." And she held Linda's hands back. Because forgiveness, real forgiveness, does not keep score. It just opens the door and lets you back in. Michael came in March. He drove 17 hours from where he was living. He arrived at 6 a.m. He knocked on the door. Dorothy answered in her robe. She looked at her son, this big man with the tired eyes and the army posture. And she opened her arms. He walked into them. He bent down, because he was a head taller than her. And he put his face against her shoulder. And he wept, the way his father had wept, outside a hospital room, 32 years before. Dorothy held him. She rubbed his back. She said, "You're home. You're home now." Jimmy took longer. Jimmy always took longer. He was stubborn the way his father had been stubborn. But he had his father's heart too, underneath it all. He came in May. He came alone, without Patricia. He sat in the kitchen. Dorothy made biscuits. She put them on the table. She poured 2 cups of coffee. She sat down across from him. She did not say anything. She let him talk. And he talked for a long time. About pressure. About money. About Patricia's expectations. About feeling like he was failing everyone. About the year his father died, and he had to become the man of the family at 21. About how heavy it had been. About how he had carried it wrong. Dorothy listened to all of it, and when he was done, she reached across the table. She put her hand over his. She said, "Robert would be so proud of you for coming here today." Jimmy broke, just completely broke, and Dorothy was there, the way she had always been. The yellow house still stands. The oak tree is enormous now. In 2021, Dorothy's granddaughter Emma, Jimmy's daughter, came to spend the summer. She slept in the room her father had slept in. Dorothy told her stories every evening on the porch. Emma recorded some of them on her phone. She posted one on social media. It got 1 million views in a weekend. She called her grandmother. "Grandma, you're going viral again." Dorothy laughed. She did not know exactly what that meant, but she liked the sound of it. In 2022, Dorothy's neighbor across the street, an 80-year-old woman named Ruth, was facing the same situation. Her son was trying to force her into a home. Ruth came to Dorothy. Dorothy helped her find a lawyer, the same Margaret Foster. Ruth kept her house. Dorothy started holding a small gathering, once a month, in her living room, for older women in the neighborhood, women who felt invisible, women whose families had forgotten them, women who needed to tell their stories. Dorothy made biscuits. She put wildflowers in a jar on the table, and she listened, because she knew better than anyone that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is simply being heard. She still sits in Robert's chair every evening. She still talks to him. She tells him what happened that day. She tells him about the grandchildren. She tells him what Carol and made for dinner. She tells him she misses him every single night. She tells him that. She tells him she is okay. She tells him the house is full again. She tells him, "We made something good, Robert. We made something that lasted." And she is right. They did. We sat with Dorothy on her porch, on a warm October afternoon, the same porch where Jimmy had come with his practiced words. The oak tree was turning gold again. She was wearing a blue cardigan. Her hands were in her lap. Her eyes were clear and steady. We asked her, "Dorothy, what do you want people to take away from your story?" She was quiet for a moment. She looked at the oak tree. She said, "I want people to call their mothers." She said it simply, without drama, without bitterness, just truth. Not tomorrow, today, right now, after this video ends. Call your mother, or your grandmother, or the woman in your life who gave you everything and never asked for anything back. Ask her how she is. Really ask. Not the way you ask when you're already walking away. Ask and then stay still and listen. Because here's what I know. We don't have unlimited time. Not any of us. And the things we don't say, they don't disappear. They just turn into weight we carry for the rest of our lives. I don't want that for you. I want you to be light. The way I felt when my children came home. That morning Michael knocked on the door. That morning was worth every hard thing. Every single one. She paused. She looked at the camera. And she said, "And to every grandmother watching this, to every woman who has given until there was nothing left to give, I want you to know something. You are not forgotten. You are seen. Your story matters. You matter. Don't you ever let anyone tell you different." She picked up her coffee cup. She looked back at the oak tree. She smiled, a small quiet smile, the kind that comes from somewhere no one can take from you. And that was Dorothy Mae Collins, sitting on her porch, in her yellow house, with the oak tree turning gold. Home, exactly where she belonged. If this story moved you, if you felt something while listening, if Dorothy's voice reminded you of someone you love, then this channel is exactly where you belong. Every week, we bring you a new story, a real story, a story about a real woman, a real family, a real life. Stories that make you feel, stories that make you think, stories that remind you what actually matters. Here is what I want you to do right now. Right now, before you scroll past, before the next video starts, hit that subscribe button. It is right below this video. It takes 1 second, 1 click, and it means that you will never miss another story like Dorothy's. Leave a comment below this video. Tell us, did this story remind you of someone? Your grandmother? Your mother? Yourself? Tell us her name. Let's fill this comment section with the names of the women who gave everything. Let them be seen. Even here, even now. Share this video. Send it to your sister, your daughter, your friend who is too busy to call her mother. Send it to anyone who needs to be reminded that the women who raise us deserve to be honored, not just in private, but out loud. Give this video a thumbs up if Dorothy's story touched your heart. That little thumbs up tells us, keep going, keep telling these stories, keep making sure these voices are heard. And if you have a story, a grandmother's story, a mother's story, your own story, send it to us. The link is in the description, because this channel is not just about Dorothy, it is about all of them. Every woman who has ever kept a family together with nothing but love and willpower. Every woman who has sat in a quiet house and wondered if anyone remembers. We remember. We are here. And we are listening. This is American Granny Stories. And we will see you in the next one.